Today is Palm Sunday, and I want to talk about focus, okay? So if I was going to balance this broom up in the air like this, would my focus be at the top of the broom, or would it be at the bottom of the broom to be able to focus? Well, how many of you think it's the bottom? Go ahead and just raise your hand if you think it's the bottom. Okay, that's a lot of people. How many of you think it's the top? That it'd be easier to do it at the top. How many of you think Nate is not very coordinated? He's not going to be doing it no matter what. It's just not going to work, okay? Thank you, Everly. Appreciate that. That's my niece. Okay, so we're going to start with the bottom. We're going to see, raise your hand if you're the bottom again. Bottom, everybody? Okay. Can you cheer for me as we do this, okay? We're going to see if I can do it for 5 seconds. Okay, ready? 1, 2, that's not going to work. I'm going to try again on this side. Maybe that'll help. 1, that's not going to work. So everybody who had the bottom, so far you're a loser as you came to church today, okay? Now, how many of you said top? Don't lie. You said top. Let's see how we do in the top. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. I can just do it. Uh-oh, I got my focus off of it. Oh, that's not too bad. So if you were the top, give yourself a round of applause. You have to focus on the top. You can also go home and try this on your own today, just for fun, on a Sunday. Figure out how to focus on something. But we're going to talk about focus today. Focusing on the right thing. How many of you have ever seen this phrase in life? You can't see the forest from the trees. Anybody ever seen that, right? What does it mean? What does it mean? You're too close. You're too close to the circumstance. You're too close to the situation that you can't see the big picture. You're focused on the wrong thing. Is it possible? I would argue that it is. That sometimes in our spiritual life, we can be so focused on the wrong things, the things that preoccupy us in life that don't really matter, that we miss the big thing that God has for us. That's the summary of Palm Sunday. If you grew up as a kid hearing about the palm branches and everybody singing Hosanna, that's great. I want to give you another look at it today, which is the idea of completely missing the point. They couldn't see the forest from the trees, and we don't want to repeat that. So let's look at the scripture, if you would follow along with me. Matthew chapter 21. I'm guessing that you have the Bible with you on your phone. Go ahead and pull your phone out. Maybe you brought your paper Bible with you today. That's awesome. Get your paper Bible out. We're going to go to Matthew chapter 21, verses 1 and 2 and following. And we're just going to look at the story of Palm Sunday and what Jesus was doing as he approached and wanted to make a difference, and how the people focused on the wrong thing. They missed the forest from the trees. Matthew 21, verse 1, it says, as they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, which is an actual mountain, so it's a big, tall thing, Jesus sent 2 disciples ahead of him, saying, go to the village ahead of you, and at once you'll find a donkey tied there with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. How many of you have a hometown that whenever you drive to it, as you're getting a mile out or a half a mile out, you start to get this feeling of I'm home? Anybody experience that? You're like, okay, I'm almost there. This is really great. Whenever we travel, we typically will go north to an airport and fly somewhere, or we'll go south to see family on 55. So when we're coming back from the airport and I get to the 80-55 interchange, I know I'm going to go down the hill and back up the hill, and there's Route 6, and I'm coming back home. And it feels good to be home. I know that when I'm traveling south to see my family in Missouri, as we're coming back up 55, and we're hitting about Arsenal Road, I'm almost to the bridge, I know I'm almost home. And there's something good about being home. As I start to pull down McKinley Woods Road, and I think about all the homes on the right and to the left, I start to think about how many people do not yet know the Lord, and how are we going to reach them? How's God going to reach out to them? You ever do that? You drive into your community, you drive into your cul-de-sac, and you just see all the homes, and you just see all the people. That's what Jesus was doing. He was approaching Jerusalem, and his point was to save the world, to save people from their sins. And he knew where everybody lived, and he knew their story, and he knew what God wanted to do in and through them as he was going to go and be the ultimate sacrifice for us. One of the really fun things that I get to do these days is I get to drive to Seneca and teach there from time to time. And that's so fun, because when you drive to Seneca, as you're coming over on Route 6, you kind of turn to the south, and you're actually on a hill, and you come down into a valley, and you come into this beautiful, wonderful town. And oftentimes, I'll drive around the town before I get to the little red church, and I just pray over the people that might be living in those homes, and if they don't know the Lord, that they'd come to know the Lord. I also get to drive down to Coal City. We'll drive down on 55, and I'll turn off of 113. Same thing, I'll drive around Diamond and Coal City for about 10 minutes before I go and get to teach there. And I just pray, God, would you just touch the hearts and the lives of the people there. You know, we're starting a campus in Shorewood. That's going to be pretty awesome. We got big news coming on that. Hold your horses. We can't release it yet. That's coming quicker than we had anticipated. And I'm finding myself just driving up to Shorewood and just driving around the neighborhoods and just praying, God, who's here that needs to know you, and how could we somehow be used by you to reach them? That's what Jesus was doing. He was getting ready to come into the neighborhood. He's getting ready to come into the cul-de-sac. He's getting ready to come into your life and my life. And are they ready for him? Well, he had this prophecy that was being fulfilled in this moment. We see the next slide, Matthew 21, 4-5. This all took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to daughter Zion, see your king. He was coming to be a king. Spiritual, they thought it was earthly. See your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. If you were to go in your scripture and go to Zechariah, which is an Old Testament book, at the very almost end of the Old Testament, and you would look at Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9, it would read exactly as what you see on the screen. Zechariah prophesied that Jesus was going to come, and he was going to come riding on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey. That's what he was doing. That was the signal that he was trying to say. Now, instead of the people looking up and saying, ooh, it's Jesus, spiritual, that's what he wants to do in our life, they were looking down and they were looking, what can we have him do for us? How can it be kind of transactional and we want God, you to fix these things for us? It's also important to note that if he was coming to be an earthly king, he would have been on a chariot and a big horse. And that would have symbolized, I'm coming to be the king, and I'm going to be powerful, and I'm going to fix your political problems. Instead, he came on a donkey, which meant, I'm coming in peace. We read on verses 7 and 8. They brought the donkey and the colt, and they placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on them. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road as well. Cut branches, palm branches, that's where we get Palm Sunday. When it says a very large crowd, that's so ambiguous. Some estimate up to 1 million people showed up for the one-person parade of Jesus riding into town on a donkey. And they were singing, God save us, Hosanna, Hosanna. But really what they wanted was an earthly king. They were focused on their needs right now instead of looking up and seeing what God was going to do spiritually for them. We've been using this phrase quite a bit around here, and I want to continue to use it. There's always a lower story in life of what we can see, feel, and touch, but then there's an upper story, and that's where God is working, and God's doing things spiritually, and we've got to be thinking about that and processing through that and trying to look up instead of just only what we can see. The problem is they missed him. You can't miss him. I can't miss him. Let's say those words. I can't miss him. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I can't miss him. Say it one more time. I can't miss him. There's a great story of one of my seminary professors. He's a brilliant guy, and part of his studies took him to England to study for his doctoral programs and so on. And he was there, and he had his wife, and they had small children at the time, and they decided, we're going to go, and we're going to see the Queen of England. There's going to be a moment where she's going to kind of, pass through. By the way, this was years ago. I know that she's passed away. I'm not crazy. This was years ago. And they went, and they said, we're going to go to a parade. They told the kids we're going to go to a parade. So they went to the parade. So here comes the parade. We'll throw this kind of picture up, just kind of an image of kind of descriptive of that. And the kids are, watching the procession and all the pomp and the circumstance. And he gets the kids back into the car, and he's like, hey, what did you think? Like, what was neat about this? And they said, oh, Dad, they described the horses. They were so big and powerful and majestic, and they had the really cool things on them. They described the bright uniforms and the royal guard and how they just had all this brightness and all these neat things, and they were really tall and powerful people. They described the carriage in great detail, how it was made of gold and how the wheels were big and all these different things. They described all of the things that they saw. Do you know the one thing they didn't mention? The Queen. And what was the whole point of going? Was to see the Queen. Is it possible? Is it possible that you and I, let's just take a moment and reflect, that we can get so preoccupied with everything that's going on in the world and everything that's going on in our lives and everything that's going on around us that we miss Jesus? Is it possible that we're so wrapped up in the things of this world and we're so wrapped up in the shiny, neat, beautiful, awesome things that we miss the only thing that really matters, and that's Jesus? Let me ask you this question. What is it that gets us so preoccupied and not focused on Jesus? What is it? Let me throw a couple ideas out there. I think one idea is the idea of our work. How many of you like to work? Just me? Okay. I love it. I love my job. But you know what the problem is with people who like to work? They become workaholics. It's like a drug. We just work and work and work and work, and we like to work all the time. And what's interesting is when we work all the time, I'm going to hold this because it's going to fall if I don't. We get so focused on this that we miss what God's even trying to do in the midst of our work and the people who are around us and how we can minister to them and change our lives to be able to help them to know who God is. How many of you have kids? Just raise your hand if you have kids. They're a joy. They're a blessing. They're the greatest gift, right? They keep you busy? Yeah, they keep us busy, don't they? It's great. I love kids. We have 2 boys. They're grown. So now we're not busy. It's really quite wonderful. Yeah, I got to tell you, empty nesting, you got to get to it. You do whatever you want. There's no rules. You got all the money now. You don't have to spend it on them. It's great. So here's what's interesting, right? Sometimes we'll sign our kids up for like 3 things. And then we'll run ourselves ragged for like 3 months. And we'll be frustrated. And they're frustrated. And it's crazy, and we're preoccupied. And all we're doing is focus on getting to this practice, and to this event, and to this choir, and to this Girl Scout, and to this, and listen, all these things are great. I'm all for the kids in the sports. I'm all for the kids in the extracurricular activities, and learning, and growing, and being in speech, and choir, and band, and karate, and all those different things. It's a lot of fun. It's good for them. It creates discipline. But when we get so focused on that we miss our Savior and what he's trying to do in our life, I think maybe we've missed the point. We went to the parade and missed the queen. How many of you feel like you get distracted from time to time with your phone? Anybody ever do that? It's like endless scrolling, right? It's just like, I'm just going to look at a couple things, and like 4 hours later, we're still sitting in the same place. And yeah, I'm not against that per se. Well, yeah, 4 hours is too long. You really shouldn't do that. But isn't it amazing how we can just become so preoccupied with things that honestly don't really matter? And we miss Jesus. We miss what he might want to do in and through our lives. I want to tell you a fun story on me about being preoccupied. So I'm going to put this picture up on the screen. I'm very competitive. It's just, I want to win at all costs. And I just love to win. I'm very competitive. So we went to this event. It was actually a conference, and they put this video thing on the screen. And this is really cool. And they said, okay, there's 3 people that are wearing white T-shirts, and there's 3 people that are wearing black T-shirts, and each one of them has a basketball, and they're going to like intermingle around each other, and they're going to pass to each other over and over and over, and we're going to see if you have the capacity. It's really hard to really focus and see how many individual passes they made to one another with the basketball. So I was locked in. They played the video, and I was watching. I didn't even blink for like 45 seconds. I just was locked in, and they got done, and they were like, how many passes? And I said 12, and I got the answer right, and I was so excited. And then they said, that's great. If you said 12, that's great. Congratulations. But how many of you, and go to the next slide, this is crazy, how many of you noticed the gorilla in the middle of the video? And I was like, there wasn't a gorilla in the middle of the video. And they rewound it back, and literally a gorilla comes right in and goes, and then comes right back. I completely missed it. How could I have possibly missed the gorilla? Well, it's because I wasn't focused. I was just focused and preoccupied with the things that I wanted to make sure that I knew so that I could win the game. And I'm afraid that in my life and potentially in yours, we're so focused right here on whatever it is that's got our attention. And we're missing the creator of the universe who's wanting to come into our life and change us from the inside out. We're going right to our takeaways at the 15-minute mark. This is the earliest I've ever been there, okay? So I'm still going to take the next 14, so don't worry. But we're going right to the takeaways, and number one is we have to find Jesus and say the last three words with me. Would you please find Jesus and respond to him? It's not hard to find Jesus. Just look up. Change your focus. We're focused on the wrong things. We're preoccupied with the wrong things. He's right there. He's right there. He's coming into your neighborhood. He's coming into your cul-de-sac. He's coming into your driveway. And what he'd really like to do is come into your heart. Will you let him in? Will you let him in? Will you let him come in and take up residence in your life? Now, when I say the term residence in your life, I know some people are like, I don't want, let's just do a quick poll. How many of you like it when people come over to visit and they stay overnight at your house? How many of you like that? 7, 8, 10. Okay, that's good. How many of you like, that just is so much work and effort and energy, and my family's here, so I'm not going to raise my hand, right? So it's just kind of like, yeah, right? It's kind of tricky. So sometimes when we think of taking up residence, it can be a negative thing. So great communicators have to show like, this is the opposite. This is what we're not talking about. And I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about. This is what we're not talking about. Roll this clip.
We love our new home. There's so much space.
We have a guest room now?
But we have ants.
You're slouching again, Ted. Expired. Expired. Expired.
Thanks, Aunt Bonnie.
It's a lot of house. I hope you can keep it clean. Oh, Teddy, did you get my friend request?
I'll have to check.
Aunt Joni's here.
Okay, so just to be super clear, Jesus is not ringing the bell at the nighttime and saying, I'm going to invade your life and it's going to be miserable and it's going to be difficult and you're going to, you're slouching and all that stuff. We need to find Jesus and let him take up residence in our life so he can change us from the inside out. In my early years of ministry, I was a senior in college, and I started to work part-time at a church in Morris called First Christian Church, a great church. I owe so much to that wonderful church. I would come up on a Friday after studying all week, Monday through Friday. I'd get there on a Friday night, and I'd stay with a family for a month at a time. We'd have dinner. I'd get to hang out. I literally would take up residence with them. Saturday morning, we'd wake up. They'd do breakfast. I'd go to the church and work in the morning into the late afternoon, and then I would get to take up residence with them again in the evening time, and we just had all these wonderful things. Sunday morning, I'd get up and I'd head to church. I'd come back for lunch, spend more time with them in their home. Then I'd have youth group on Sunday night, and I would drive back, and then I'd repeat it. In the summer times and during breaks of school, I'd get to stay full time, so it'd be every single day. I got to stay with people and take up residence with Neil and Julie Sanborn. And I learned from them how to have a blast with your kids. They had a high school and a junior higher at the time that I was with them. And they would invite all the other kids to come over, but they would be there with them and hang out. And that's what I ended up doing with my kids when they grew up. I got to hang out with the Leahy family. They were very bright people, high capacity corporate people. And they had all this goodness in them and all this wisdom and intelligence. And you know what they would do when I would show up? They'd ask me questions about my life. And they'd ask me about my studies, and they'd ask me about my dreams, and they'd ask me about my strengths and my weaknesses and my goals. And then they would come up with ways to help me with those. Never once did they share how brilliant or great they were. They just were concerned about me. They were so hospitable. I learned so much from the Leahys. Gary and Carolyn, I never stayed with them in their home, but I spent a lot of time with them because Carolyn was the church secretary. And every day that I would go in, Carolyn would check with me and say, what time did you go to bed last night? What did you eat last night? And I just went ahead and made you lunch today because I figured you probably forgot to bring your lunch. And that was always the case. And Gary would come alongside, and as I was a young leader developing, he would walk with me and he would say, okay, let's think about this. You had this situation, you had this event, and it went pretty good. Let's walk through it. And we'd walk through it, and where I did something right, he would compliment me, and he would build me up. And more importantly, where I did something wrong, and I made a bad choice, he would say, this was an area, if we could do it over again, how would we have handled this differently? I'd walk through a wall for that man. He was so good to me, so good to me. I had one family, this is kind of funny, we joke about it even to this day. Every time I stayed at their house, my car broke down. Every single time. A couple times, I just barely kind of coasted into their driveway, and this guy just happened to be a mechanical kind of guy. He just fixed my car. Every time I'd go, he'd be like, hey, don't worry about it. I'll just fix your car for you. His name was Kurt, and his wife, Sue Lynn, would just sit and make me food, and we'd just sit and eat and talk while Kurt was fixing the car. It was incredible. I learned so much by taking up residence with people that I didn't know, because I got to see the good in them and how they lived their life. Can you imagine what Jesus could do in your heart if you allowed him to take up residence? Can you imagine every situation that you're facing, that if it wasn't just you, it was you and Jesus? What a difference that would make. Not trying to take all of the burden on your own and not trying to do it all by yourself, but inviting the creator of the universe into the situation. And here's where we make our turn. This is a very important question. What do you need to lay down at the feet of Jesus? In the story of Palm Sunday with Jesus, they were laying down palm branches because it was transactional. Jesus, you fix this thing that I've got to deal with. You become the political leader. You become the guy that's going to give us power so that we can overcome other people. Maybe what if we flipped that and said, Jesus, instead of us trying to get you to do what we want you to do, maybe we need to come before you and say, I need you to change me from the inside out. And here's an open book, God. Go to work. Do what you need to do. I'll share with you a couple of things that I've been focusing on and being preoccupied with and not focusing on Jesus. I've been focused on and preoccupied with the growth of the church. The last 3, 4, 5 years has just been outstanding. Things are happening, people are growing, new people, new campuses, more new campuses. It's been incredible. It's been overwhelming. And there's been a lot of time where I've just spent focused on that growth and preoccupied with that growth. And finally, I hope finally, I'm at a place in my life where I'm just saying, God, I can't control this. You're on the move. I'm just going to lay it at your feet, and you do what you need to do, and you provide how you want to provide, and I'll just come along for the ride instead of trying to tell you how to make all of these things work. I wonder in your life if you're needing to put at the feet of Jesus your kids. I talk to people every day that are really concerned about their kids. They're concerned about what they're dealing with. They're concerned about what they're struggling with. They're concerned about what friends they're hanging out with. And I wonder if just in this moment we put them, let's just put them at the feet of Jesus and say, Jesus, will you intercede? We're going to do everything we can, but we're going to trust you. I wonder if we need to place our finances at the feet of Jesus. It's so funny in my world. I can talk to people who don't have 2 nickels to rub together, but they're happy. And I can talk to people who have millions of dollars and they're not happy. It's crazy. It's crazy how Satan can just trick us in our finances and it's never enough. When's it ever going to be enough? Or maybe our finances are out of control and we maybe need to really focus on that and get that under control. I don't know. So many people are struggling in relationships. I'm struggling in my marriage. I don't know if we're going to make it. I'm struggling with my dad. We just cannot get along. I'm struggling with my mom. I'm struggling with an illness that's going on in the family. And I just don't know what to do. I can't fix it. What if we just laid it at the feet of Jesus? and said, instead of looking at this lower story and what it is, let's let God come into the situation and see what he might want to do. What is it that you need to lay at the feet of Jesus? Let me encourage you to just land there for a little while. I'm going to give a few more clear things that we can do to take actions, but that's really the main question for the day. Let's go to the action sides that we can do right away. Red letter challenge. Hopefully you got a book. I want you to grab it somewhere close to you. If you're watching online, you can hit the chat button and let us know if you'd be interested in this challenge, and Patrick will follow up with you, and we'd be honored to have you be a part of it. Here's what we're going to do starting on Easter Sunday, so next week. We're going to challenge everybody to look at the red letters of the Bible. These are the words of Jesus, and for 40 days in a row, look at the words of Jesus and then put them into action. You think God might change you from the inside out? If we let him take up residence in our life and we look at his words and then we begin to live them out. Inside of this, you'll see a little bookmark that kind of tells you how to get started and what we're going to be doing, and also a little envelope. These books are like $18, $20. I can't remember, but the church is subsidizing that, so it's only 10. If you got $10, just throw it in the envelope, drop it somewhere so that we can receive that, or you can do the QR code, or if you don't have $10, just take it home with you. We don't really care. The main thing we want is we want 500, 600, 800, 1,000 people reading the words of Jesus and putting them into practice for 40 days in a row. Can you imagine what God might do in and through us if we just did that? Here's our last statement for today. Make sure everyone else knows. Make sure everybody knows about who Jesus is. What's next Sunday? March 31st. That's Easter. Oh my goodness. It's the day we celebrate everything, the resurrection, right? It's incredible. We have hope in life after death because Jesus raised from the dead. We get to see everybody. It's going to be a great thing. Make sure everybody else knows. I'm thinking about Palm Sunday, and I'm thinking about Jesus coming down the Mount of Olives and wanting to see everybody and wanting everyone to know, and so many people missed it. How do I say so many people missed it? Well, because by Thursday night, they had him falsely accused, and by Friday morning, they had him on a cross. They totally missed it. Don't miss it. And don't let others miss it. Who are you bringing next week? Now, I know you look at the room right now and you're like, Nate, there's not a lot of seats here. I'm fully aware of that, okay? Trust me, I am fully 100. We have got some geometry. We've got some trigonometry. We are going to figure out a way to add another 75 chairs in here. And we've also added a service. So we have a service on Saturday night, 5 o'clock. So Saturday night, 5, and then our normal 9 and 10:30 here. You bring your neighbor. You bring your friend. You bring that person in the cul-de-sac. You invite online. You invite online. So if you've got a college roommate that lives somewhere else in the United States, you invite them. But let's make sure that everybody knows. Let's walk up and down the cul-de-sac or the street this week, and let's take that little Easter thing home with you, that flyer, and just, hey, come to Easter. I've got my 3 neighbors to the right. I think they're going to come to Easter. Can you just pray about that? I think finally, gosh dang it, I hope they're not watching this. I just realized, sorry guys, if you're watching, you're on TV. No pressure, but you got to come now. I think that after almost a decade, they're going to come. And I'm praying that God would just invade their heart and change them from the inside out. And I'm praying that God would do that with your friends and family